Me. Everybody, welcome to the webinar. Come with me if you want to convert. As our excellent introduction said, this is me, this handsome devil here. I am the founder of Conversion Sciences, and I'm going to talk to you about Mobile 2.0 Judgment Day. Judgment Day is coming, and we know it for sure because we've seen this before. Let's take you back to the turn of the 20th century. For those of you that aren't like me, that aren't good at time math, that means the late 1800s, early 1900s. This was car 1.0. Horses carried us everywhere. They drove our buggies. They drove our buses. They pulled our streetcars. And in a city like New York, especially the island of Manhattan, where millions of people are crammed onto one island in small spaces, Judgment Day came. That's right, the streets filled with manure. They didn't know what to do with this. It couldn't be carted out of there easily, certainly not faster than the horses. And if you brought in more horses to carry out the manure, you're really just adding to the problem. In 1894, this became a real problem for the city of New York. What were they going to do? Would they just end up wallowing in the manure of their transportation choices? Well, it turns out car 2.0 came along. These are some of the early models, and this, it turns out, saved New York, the invention of the car. Interestingly enough, back then the earliest cars were electric. So we're starting to come full circle from the days of the Prius all the way up to Tesla, full circle to the electric car. The same thing happened with Web 1.0. You may remember Web 1.0. It was a time when the web was new. Netscape was the browser of choice, the only browser available with any features whatsoever, and we didn't really know what the rules are. So we put up whatever we do on our websites. When Web 2.0 came along, we laughed at the websites that we saw there. Web 2.0 said, hey, why don't we take this web thing, get some standards in place, and start understanding, have a kind of common way of interacting with people. And we also came out and said, we can do anything on the web. We can get medical information and sell toys and sell garden equipment and plants and get things for our pets. Of course, Judgment Day came. This is a graph of the NASDAQ stock exchange where many of these new websites were IPOing. Of interest, I think, here on January 10th of 2000, AOL bought a huge media company, Time Warner, for $156 billion in stock. The internet company bought the telecom company. And then, of course, shortly after that, things reversed. As we know, that turned out to be a really bad deal for the Time Warner folks, and everything fell. IPOs stopped. Those that had gone IPO closed their doors, declared bankruptcy. This was Judgment Day 2.0. And now we're seeing it with mobile web 1.0. And today, this is what we see with mobile web 1.0. There are primarily two segments of mobile websites. Those that are just the desktop site with really no change, like the one here on the left. And then those that have been developed through a responsive website. In other words, the site shrinks down and formats itself for the smaller screens. And in general, when I'm talking about the mobile web here, I'm going to be talking about smartphones, the small screen web. In general, we find that the tablets adapt to the desktop screens very well and doesn't require the kind of changes. However, walking around with our smartphones, wherever we could be, there's a fundamental shift not only in the size of the screen, but in the context in which visitors are using that device. They are out and about. They're waiting in line at the bank. So we really want to design something different for those, and I'm going to talk about those changes that we're seeing that are working to improve conversion rates, either lead generation, sales, or subscribers. So we got these two main areas, poorly or no implementation whatsoever for mobile web 1.0, and then just taking whatever's on the desktop and shrinking it down for the smaller screen. And it causes problems like overlays that fill the screen and things like that. You'll get to see some of the examples of that as I go through this. It's a little bit deja vu. So the mobile web, as we're starting to do things like parallax scrolling, where animations are triggered by our scrolling, looks a little bit like Web 1.0, doesn't it? So what is Web 2.0 going to look like? Well, unfortunately, we don't know yet. Just as the guys driving the horses in New York didn't really know that the car was coming, we don't know what Web 2.0 is ultimately going to look like. But we've conducted hundreds of tests over the last few years, and we've begun to understand what mobile visitors need to convert. Here is Judgment Day, though. Take note of this. This is a graph of the mobile traffic versus all traffic for a high-price e-commerce site. Now, this is a site that caters to people 45 and over. This is a catering to people further along in their earning years. And, you know, the common thought is that, well, older people are going to be slower to adopt, but it isn't true. The red dotted line that you see here is the percentage of mobile traffic for this community. And you can see that it has gone over these 14 months from around 20% to almost 35% for this particular site. Here's another one, a consumer community. Here we see that they've gone from around 35% and have approached 60%. There's a little yearly seasonality in these numbers, but the red dotted line is very clear that mobile traffic is one of their fastest growing segments. And this one, high school students. Well, mobile has been more traffic than desktop in this case, and you can see that it's growing much faster than their desktop traffic. This site helps high school students choose the college that they want to go to. Judgment Day comes from the fact that we have this fast-growing segment, this amazing opportunity that just converts like crap. So if you look at the comparison here between the desktop and the smartphone, you can see that the add-to-cart rates are about half on a smartphone as they are on the desktop, and the conversion rates a fraction of what they are on the desktop. So this will be our Judgment Day, and this is happening in your website. I can almost promise you, very rarely do we see a site that doesn't have a fast-growing mobile segment if it doesn't already have a large segment of mobile visitors. 30, 40, or 50% of their visitors are already coming on mobile. And a lot of these clients are saying, well, mobile doesn't convert, so we'll ignore it. This will be your downfall, and this will be Judgment Day. Don't panic, this is just an animated GIF, but this illustrates what you can expect when the dam crumbles and you find yourself optimized for the desktop, but most of your traffic is mobile. They will be going to your better optimized competitors. So this is me again. I just like to put slides of myself up. I started Conversion Sciences in 2007, so we've been doing this for a very long time. We've been primarily a testing agency since 2011, and if you could see me, you would see that I was wearing a lab coat. And the reason I wear the lab coat is very important, and the reason I show you the lab coat is very important. There's a science called enclothed cognition, and it says that what we wear can affect our behaviors. Research on this has shown that when I put on a lab coat, I think I'm smarter than I am. So the number of errors that I make falls. Not only that, but when you see me in a lab coat, you think I'm smarter than I am. So it's a win-win for me. I'll make fewer mistakes, and you'll tend not to notice the ones that I make. So we really believe in the lab coat, and it's great if the air conditioners turn down too low. If you're just cold, the lab coat really does help. So we have more than one client for whom our mobile conversion rate is higher than their desktop conversion rate. So it is possible to have a mobile conversion rate that is equal to or better than your desktop conversion rate. I'm going to tell you how we did it. I'm just going to spell it out right here. We didn't just stop with the responsive design. Responsive design might get you 50% of the way towards what your mobile visitors want, but not all the way. We picked the right goals for mobile. As I said, mobile visitors are in a different context. They are out and about or in between things. They're in a completely different decision-making mode, and we want to make sure that our mobile site takes advantage of that. We keep our calls to action handy. I'll show you a few of the techniques that we've tested that have worked very well for us and that you should try on your site to keep calls to action handy on these mobile devices. We have to honor the thumb and deal with it. It's a very powerful appendage on a mobile site, causes amazingly fast scrolling, incredible scanning capabilities, and there are ways of dealing with that. And you have to admit that you don't have one mobile site, but you have 10 or 20 or 30 mobile sites. I want to start off on that point. Mobile 2.0 has to be reliable and fast. Since people are, what I say, out and about, not sitting at their desk leaning forward, there is less tolerance for a site that is working slowly or a site that does not work. Your site is broken on one of these screens, and these are all the screens that you have to deal with. Here, we can see the desktop and 4 different versions of the mobile sites, but you probably have even more than that. When you think about the different operating systems, the different browsers, the different devices, the different screen sizes, you really are dealing with a large number of websites. So it takes attention to really handle that. There are a number of ways that these devices change and issues that we need to address. Load time, screen size, how good is the network connection? Is it a responsive design? Is it a dedicated mobile line? And then is it a landscape or a horizontal orientation? And if you don't address this issue, you end up with things like this. This is from a site called leaders.digital. Well, they don't look very leaderly to me here. And things like this, we call this disresponsive. It's disrespectful responsive design. Out of the gate, the chat now box just sat in the middle of the screen. And things like this, where you've got things popping up that just don't work on a certain screen. Is it mobile icons? Is it a lead box? What is it? Why is it moving? This is a picture of our lab. So when we're testing on mobile, we have taken it to heart that we just can't hope that our changes in our tests are going to run good on all systems. So we have a wide variety of devices, many vintages of operating system, all the browsers we could expect, so that for any one of our clients, we can go in and actually grab a device that is a good proxy or the exact device that a large number of their visitors are coming on. And as you saw, analytics tells us which of these devices and screen sizes and operating systems and browsers we're going to be dealing with. The other thing you have to acknowledge is that mobile connections are not good connections. We generally test our devices on 3G or 4G connections. This is the cell tower that's right outside our office here, and we spend so much time testing on these 3G and 4G connections that we actually set it on fire. I recommend that you do the same thing. Don't test your mobile devices on your Wi-Fi, your corporate Wi-Fi, your high-speed Wi-Fi, because even if your visitors are on a Wi-Fi connection, they may not be close to the source and may be experiencing the equivalent of a 3G or a 4G connection. So the moral,
hey, Brian,
yeah.
I got a question here that about video on mobile. So the question was, what percentage of mobile visitors, I guess to be clarified here, is what's the conversion rate on video sales on mobile versus desktop?
Video sales, or using video as a sales tool, do you think? What do you think they meant?
It says video sales letters on mobile versus desktop.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's something that I've not specifically tested a video sales letter. I will tell you this, that video is very complex and very powerful. So if you get it wrong, it's going to have a very negative impact on your conversion rate. If you get it right, it can really have a powerful impact. On the small screen mobile devices, we generally find that if we have explainer videos and things like that, that they just don't get watched. However, when we put video on a page, and this is true for desktop and for mobile, we find that the conversion rate will go up even though we see maybe 9% of the people actually watch the video. So there's something about having video on your site that makes you seem legit, builds trust, is something that keeps people on because they're like, well, I don't want to watch that right now. But you really need to understand the context of your visitors, why they're coming to the site. If they're in a leisurely position, you know, they're sitting back, killing some time, they very well may watch your video. But it's worth testing because there's something else going on there that helps build trust.
Thanks.
So mobile 2.0 also means quick decisions. As we're getting close to the front of the line at the bank, or we're coming to the end of the period of time that we have to kill because the meeting's about to start, we want to give folks the ability to go ahead and take action. We also don't know when on a page they're going to get the key piece of information that will allow them to make a decision. Remember this, the thumb is strong and they will scroll through. The mobile pages are generally long from a screen size compared to a desktop page. And we'd like to be able to just keep all in the key thumbing areas, but we really can't. I mean, we just can't have screens that have all the call to actions right where the thumbs are likely to be. But what we found is that thumbable headers and thumbable footers are really key. And when we do tests like these, we have a shorthand for them. In this case, we tested a header, and this sticky header, so this stays on the page as they're scrolling, this one that says calculate my chances, gave us a 20% increase in registrations for this site, which is what they were optimizing for. We call this a headband. And the same is with footers. So in this case, the footer was more effective at increasing the number of clicks to this really important editor's choice page. We had high conversion rates when people came to this page, 45% increase in clicks over to that key page. We call these sticky footers, we call them sticky shoes. And something happens too. We notice on mobile for many sites that a large percentage of the traffic makes it all the way to the bottom. This is the power of that thumb. People are scrolling through, and then boom, they hit the bottom. In this case, 50% of visitors were reaching the bottom. And what's at the bottom here? It says, you are here, home directory. Yeah, good. I can go to the desktop version, but that's certainly not what we want them to do. The copyright information is here. What could we be doing with the bottom of this page that would make it more effective? We actually created some content at the bottom that significantly reiterated the value proposition and gave them a way to take action. In this case, it's a click-to-call link. So instead of the footer and copyright stuff on your mobile site, you may want to replace it with a call to action for that page. This gave us an 8% increase, but you'll find out in optimization that these 8%, 10% increases is how you really get yourself to the point of doubling and tripling your conversion rates on your mobile site. We call this a dripping pan. Anything that's at the bottom of the page that catches those bounces, because the gravy is often the juiciest, most wonderful part of the page.
Brian, quick question we had here was, are you in favor of responsive page or page design for mobile?
So we are in favor of responsive for a couple reasons. Number one, it allows you to get your content onto mobile quickly, and there are SEO advantages to having the same URL on mobile and on desktop. So as you optimize your mobile sites with the responsive design, you're not having to worry about having a whole other set of, for instance, M.dot mobile pages to optimize as opposed to your main pages. So the two can play off of each other. But remember, responsive design only gets you part of the way there, and I'm going to show you some examples of where responsive design lets you down. This is a test style that we call a lead hat. These are huge sticky headers, in this case for North Central University. But look at what's at the top of these sticky headers. The logo is there, request info, the phone number is there, a cue to live chat, menu. or alternatively, a search bar with the hamburger menu icon there. You can put a lot in these things. You can put menu icons, you can put a search icon in there, the whole search field. You can put navigation in these sticky headers. Add to cart, click to call, subscribe, social icons. If you're good at getting social media back to your site, social icons might make sense. Use them carefully though, because they can take people away off to Facebook or Twitter, and you may never get them back again. As I said, company logo and live chat are a couple of other things that we can consider. So stop and think about what sorts of things you could put in one of these lead top hats, these sticky headers. You, of course, don't want to overdo it. One of our developers thought that this was funny, and as you scroll down the page, in this case, the sticky shoe gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So any questions about lead top hats, sticky shoes, headbands?
We did have one question about, do your comments also apply to apps? I don't know if that's what you want to talk about or not.
You know, we don't do a whole lot of app testing, so I honestly I don't have any data to point to that, but all of this is to generate hypotheses that you should try. So I would definitely try these things on a mobile app, a dedicated application. The people who are using a dedicated application are a very different segment from the general population that comes to your website. They are more closely related to your brand, or they're solving a very specific problem that your app is providing. And so I suspect it will be very different, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't try these same techniques.
Okay. And one other question on the lead hat headers. It says, when should you use the lead hat headers?
You know, we see them work on a variety of different pages. What you don't, I mean, if you you might have a different sticky shoe or a different lead top hat on different pages. So if you have an e-commerce site and you've got a product page, you might favor add to cart. That would be there all the time as they're reviewing the product page. On a category page, you might consider a search, something like that. So I think it really depends on the page that you're on, and that's why straight up responsive designs don't really work, because they don't take different pages into account and what you're optimizing for them.
Okay. Thanks. I think that's all the questions for now.
Great. So mobile 2.0 is personal, and we need to take into account that there are some different people, some significant segments that are coming. One of the most interesting is the difference between Android visitors and iOS visitors. They act very differently. So here's some tests. Many of these hadn't come to fruition, but all you need to look at for these are running in an A/B testing tool, one of the A/B testing tools that we use to figure out what works and what doesn't work on a website. And you want to look for red or green. Red means that a treatment is underperforming. In this case, you'll see that the new header under iOS has got red, but the new header under Android is green. Here's another one. Here, iOS and Android is red. And here, iOS is green, Android is red. This just means that iOS visitors are preferring a treatment, Android visitors are not preferring those treatments. So if we look at our sticky header example here, these are the lead top hats, and we look at the response rates for Android versus iPhone, you can see that in this case, this lead top hat did very well for both of them, but look at how much more effective it was for Android users. The second one, it was a modicum increase. Statistically, it was flat for Android users, but iPhone users hated it. It actually reduced the conversion rate for iPhone users. Some navigation styles. So we tested a long, detailed navigation style versus a very simple style that brought you to category pages for you to continue searching. Android users loved the long, detailed one. iOS users preferred the simple one. This test, by the way, we call this "What's for Lunch?" because it's a menu thing. Ha ha ha. So the rule of thumb here is that when you're doing any testing, when you're trying these things out, you really need to go in and ferret out what's going on, which segments are affecting it. You could have a test on mobile, if you're testing maybe one of the lead top hats, and you find out that it didn't work. You should go in and look and see if maybe Android users loved it and iPhone users hated it, and that tells you something about your audience. And as our tools become more sophisticated, we'll be able to target those segments with different experiences, and this is where you really begin to get into the world of personalization. So mobile 2.0 is mobile. This may sound stupid, but mobile visitors want a mobile experience. I mean, it's what we think our mobile visitors want, or in too many cases, what our responsive web design thinks that mobile visitors want, but they will carve their own path. Unfortunately, many times their own path leads away from your site to a competitor site. So here's an example of some calls to action that are uniquely mobile. What you're going to find, or what we're finding, I should say, is that mobile visitors want a different way to take action. And there's a number of reasons for this, but here's a couple of where Etsy is actually using their mobile site to increase the number of people who are downloading their app. And as I said, when someone downloads your app and installs it, and keeps it installed and uses it, they are a far more engaged, far more valuable segment. So the apps allow you to really key on that. The Economist here offers 2 calls to action. You can register to get free 3 articles each week, easy to do, or you can go ahead and see the subscription offers, which is more of a desktop style call to action. And one thing we have to remember is that embedded on all of our phones, there's this rarely used app called the phone. There's a comedian that says, you know, calling a smartphone a phone is like calling a Mercedes convertible a cup holder. There's so many things that we do on the site, on our phones, but we don't want to forget that the phone call is something that we can offer, something that we should offer. And in fact, for those sites where we have the highest mobile conversion rates, we are optimizing for phone calls. So just instrumenting the phone numbers on your site, on your mobile site, so that the links are set up right, where if I click on them, I will be asked to place a call, is an easy way, in this case, a 20% gain in the number of phone calls that this mobile site was generating. Make calling an option, and make sure that you've implemented your links correctly so that a click on it opens the phone app and gets them on the phone with you. We call this particular thing a 911. And
hey, Brian,
sometimes,
a quick question here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so we had a question on a couple things. Someone asked about the lead hats. Do they take up too much valuable screen space? Kind of your opinion on that.
Yeah, it's a very valid question. So if you've got sticky things all over the page, is it taking up screen space and keeping people from reading the content that's underneath? It is a concern, and that's why we test these things. We don't just implement them on every site. It's definitely worth testing, and that's also why we were, I guess, surprised at the lifts we saw at North Central University, where it had these very large lead top hats, and still it increased the conversion rate. So there is there's probably a fine medium between the two. Yeah. And Google is making rumblings about, for mobile phones, if you open a page and then fill it with an offer, like a popover, an entrance popover, or a timed or scroll triggered popover, they might penalize you for that. That they are going to penalize you if you can't see the content that their bot saw when they first went and visited the site. So something to take into account. Test, absolutely.
Another one was, is there a way to target Android and iPhone users separately within AdWords?
Within AdWords, you know what? I can't answer that question. I would be shocked if there wasn't, but I think we'll have to ask somebody who is more experienced with AdWords than I am to answer that question.
Okay.
It's a great thought, because that becomes one of the ways you can start personalizing. If you can target your ads at the different users and take them to a different landing page, one that's optimized for Android, one that's optimized for iOS, you're starting to personalize, and it's very, very powerful.
Got
Excuse
it.
me, we had Taco Thursday earlier today, and I think my tacos want to get involved in the webinar here.
The other question they had on the headers and footers was, says, do you need to only use sticky header or sticky footer?
No, it can be either or both. We are sensitive to crowding up the screen because the content underneath does move the value proposition forward typically, or provides the content that the visitor is coming for. So we usually try to find the one that's the best, but that doesn't mean that we haven't had tests where we have both a lead top hat and sticky shoes on the page.
Okay. Then last question is asks if making one's regular site responsive isn't the recommended method, what is the recommended method?
So the most flexibility you're going to have is if you have a separate template for mobile, and it is 100% under your control separately. Realistically, you gain quite a bit from the responsive design. So you can do a responsive design, but then you have to go back and change the responsive design's behavior for those small screen mobile visitors to add the proper sticky headers and things like that. The testing tools that we use actually change the page in the visitor's browser. And so when we see somebody coming on mobile and they're on a certain screen, it will show a certain sticky header, sticky footer, or other item on the page. And we use that to modify the responsive template. But ultimately, you're going to want to go and take those results, take what you want to change, hand it to your development team, and say, when people come to the category page, we want this sort of a lead top hat. And when they come to the product page, we're going to want this sort of sticky shoe. And they're going to have to customize that responsive template to implement those sorts of things. So I think the best approach is a responsive web design with custom modifications for your small screen visitors.
Thanks. All right, I think that's it.
Yeah, just to kind of underscore the importance of phone calls here, this is a little test we did where we tested a search icon and a phone icon, and the phone icon gave us a 22% increase in calls. That may seem intuitive, but you'll be surprised sometimes the results you get. Just underscoring that giving people an obvious visual way to call can really increase the number of phone calls that you get. So another thing that we've had some luck with is something we call Screenhoppers. This is a situation where, if for whatever reason, your visitors can't accomplish on your mobile device, or what you want them to accomplish on the desktop really can't or shouldn't be implemented on the mobile desktop, you can take their name and number and get them to visit you again when they're at their desk on a desktop. Here's an example of what we went through with a company called eSigns. They have a vinyl sign and a variety of different kinds of signs, yard signs, mesh banners that you can design on the web. So you either upload your own artwork or you enter your own text and stuff. And works great on the desktop, but it's a Flash implementation. So the application absolutely doesn't work on mobile. So when we come in on a small screen, there's just a big blank space, and they had been saying, well, nothing we can do with mobile visitors, so we just ignore them and give them a big blank space. So we implemented a Screenhopper, and we changed their mobile device, their mobile experience, so that at the very top of the page, they are invited. They say, ready to design with us? Great. Using your mobile device to do it? Not so fast. Big fingers, small display area, you get it. And then we ask for their name and email address. Here's a blow up of what that looks like. Then we send them an email. Now went from a horrible brand experience, this company doesn't know what they're doing, to a 5.3% form completion rate on mobile. And we sent them an email saying, hey, when you're back on a desktop, go ahead and design your sign. We've got a great tool for you. Now, unfortunately, about 60% of the visitors came back on their mobile devices when they got the email. But that's okay, because We had a high click-through rate, and those that came through on desktop did buy. But more importantly, we knew what the value of a new email subscriber was to this company. We had done the evaluation, and everybody who's on their email list would buy $11, on average $11 worth of signage, because they had a very aggressive and productive email campaign. So in the first, I think this was in the first 30 days, we had 1,300, almost 1,400 subscribers. And if we do that every month, multiply that by $11, we found a good $881,000 in additional revenue just from this very simple little fix. Your mileage will vary. You may find that this Screenhopper really knocks it out of the park for you. So the bottom line of all of this is that you need to optimize your mobile site separately. If you have responsive design, understand that you're only going to be getting 50, 40, 30% of the way there, and that you need to begin to understand what are the specific calls to action, what are the things that your mobile visitors really want, what can you do to get them to begin a conversation with them if you can't get them all the way through to buy, for instance. So I'm going to talk a little bit about responsive web design. It really is right now all about just shrinking the site and making things fit in a more vertical, smaller space, taking advantage of the power of the thumb so that people can scroll through the content. But as I said, it only gets you part of the way there. The template makes decisions for you that you may not anticipate. Not all these decisions are really very good. Not all of them are good. Here's an example. I got a link from a webinar that I was interested in, Advanced Conversion Strategies for Mobile Search. But this page required me to do all of this on my mobile device. And as interested as I was in this particular one, there was no way I was going to go through and do this with my thumbs and the errors and then clicking register now and saying you missed something. This is just not a very good mobile experience. And responsive web designs will break things for you. Here's some examples that we saw from the responsive design of one of our clients. The forms are set up bad. There was some pagination problem. I'm sure all of you have gotten in a scroll or a click jail where you've either had a popover box open and fill the whole screen, and the little X is off the screen and you can't scroll to it, so all you can do is leave the site. Or you scroll down and suddenly a map fills the whole thing and you can always scroll around the map. Both of these things are going to cause people to leave your site, which is the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish with conversion optimization. Here's an example of a company called Banfield. I love this headline. We haven't been properly introduced. Let's fix that. Well, the responsive design decided to remove the name of the company. So the responsive design really made this headline true. I think a better way to fix it would be to go ahead and have the logo and the company name right there at the top. Here's one that we did with our client, and we had tested this little bit of text and found that of all the things we tried, this very simple call to action with the phone number in it was a great way to get people to call. However, the responsive design stripped it right out. So when we went in and added it back in again, we got a 26% increase in calls. This headline works well on mobile, and our mobile responsive web design template decided it didn't think it was all that important. We call this, by the way, a baby mustache. It makes your little site more grown up. And you should be putting that thumb to work. So I think you should test some things like horizontally scrolling images and things like that. The thumb is really a unique appendage, and if you present the information right, you're going to have more engagement, more people thumbing through your products, and more sales. So any questions about customizing for Web 2.0 and responsive web design issues?
The only question we had was asked, have you tried designing a website in mobile and then adjusting for desktop instead of the normal way, designing for desktop and then adjusting for mobile?
There is a whole movement called mobile first, in which you do just that. So you design for the mobile site and then send essentially responsive your way such that the desktop borrows from the mobile site. So yeah, there is an entire design cottage industry around that sort of thing. So I would certainly consider exploring that, considering how fast the mobile segment is growing, considering how hard it is to get them to convert with using typical desktop calls to action and offers. It seems to make big sense to me. Google is more and more paying attention to it. Facebook is paying more and more attention to mobile. Would not be a bad strategy, I don't think. We haven't specifically tested any sites that took a mobile first approach, but it absolutely makes sense to us.
Good. And then another question was, what A/B testing tool do you use?
We use a variety of A/B testing tools. Most of our customers are either using Optimizely or Visual Website Optimizer. We also have clients on Marketizator, Adobe Target. We've used Maximizer in the past, Monotate. Those are more personalization tools. They're generally not as flexible or as powerful for strictly A/B testing. So one of the things is that we're in a golden age of tools right now. So for all of our clients, we start them off with a diet of click tracking software. We like Crazy Egg. A company called Hotjar has a very inexpensive solution. Doesn't have a lot of the features we like in Crazy Egg, but it will show you where people are clicking, where the mouse is moving, how far they're scrolling on your pages, and you can really begin to understand what's going on with your visitors. We also like tools like Inspectlet that does screen recording. You can sit and watch folks and see where they get tied up and begin to develop ideas about how you can make things better on your site simply by watching them use the site and seeing where they have trouble. And then the variety of A/B testing tools, which really gives us complete control over the page. We can do almost anything we want. There is no reason that almost any website with at least 200 transactions, either 200 leads or 200 sales a month, couldn't begin testing some of these concepts on their pages and understanding exactly what their visitors are responding to.
Perfect. The other one was a question on getting mobile users to sign up for SMS messaging, best practices to do that. Any opinion there?
You know what? We haven't tested any SMS signups that I know of, so I don't have any data for you. But one thing I will say is that we are becoming more and more tolerant of that. So there's been a period of time in which I'm not going to give you my phone number so you can text me because it's a personal one-to-one medium. That's going to go away, and marketers are more and more going to be able to use that channel. Last research I read showed that text messages have a 97% open rate, as opposed to an email, which might have an open rate between 5% and 40%. You know, 40–50% open rate on an email. I'm sorry, click-through rate on an email is pretty astounding. So if I would absolutely test something like that if you have an offer that lends itself well to text messaging.
All right. Another question we had here was, is it okay to have a phone number on a mobile page twice? On the last example, it showed the phone number listed twice at the top hat, once in the top hat and once underneath the top hat.
Yeah. So when we're optimizing for phone calls on desktop or mobile, we make that phone number available everywhere. Number one, we have best luck on the desktop when we include the phone number in a headline. So you could say, we're here to help you, call and put the number right there in the headline. Repeating that offer in the content about 75% of the way down as a rule of thumb, and then of course the dripping pan, having it again at the bottom. But you know, unless you see some data, and again, this is great use of these click tracking tools, Crazy Egg, Hotjar, those sorts of things. If you find out that it's pushing your content down or something like that, you can back out of that. But if calls are what you're optimizing for, I wouldn't be too shy about putting that phone number on there as many times as you like.
Okay. And the last one was, have you found the attention time on mobile to be much less than desktop?
In other words, time on page, time on site?
Yeah.
You know something? It's not a metric that we actually pay a lot of attention to, and I'll tell you why. Very often we'll find out that when we increase the engagement, so the engagement is kind of the catch-all for time on site, number of pages viewed, and number of additional clicks done. We often find that that's inversely related to the conversion rate. So what's probably happening is we are giving them more and more content or more and more ways to delay making that final decision, either to click the call or complete the form, to take action on the page, click add to cart, whatever we're optimizing for. So it's not something that I have any data on, something that we occasionally watch because we're interested in understanding what the relationship is, but there's not much of a correlation between engagement and conversion in our experience.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to bring it to a close here. We've got about, I guess, about 9 more minutes. Most importantly, I want to say that Mobile 2.0 opportunity. So it kind of presented a lot of issues and concerns, but it really is, it's the fastest growing segment of your market. Right now it's converting very low, and if you can go in and find some of these combinations of a unique mobile experience, then you really do have a chance to make a great deal more money, generate more leads and subscribers. And just to kind of summarize it, here's a couple of, this is actually a WordPress template. It is, they have a separate desktop and mobile, and some of the differences that make sense is, number one, removing filler images. You can do this with a responsive design. We want them removed, not just hidden, because these images slow your load time. And as the point I made earlier, it's got to be fast and reliable. So you want the load times to be as little as possible, more so on mobile than on desktop. You can have different calls to action. You might have a form or a purchase process on your desktop, but maybe a click to call or a social sign-in on your mobile site. And you can add calls to action more frequently on mobile because we've got this long scrolling page. People's thumbs are going to get them down the page. So it makes sense to maybe increase the frequency of that call to action. And when you think about when your visitors are on their mobile device, many of your businesses, especially if you have a local business, one of the questions is, where are they and where am I in relation to them? So maps can be very, very important. Consider adding mobile specific content like this to your site. And then, as I said, the dripping pans are really important. So count on the bounce, count on more people's thumbs to get them down to the bottom of your page, and make sure that when they get there, they don't just go, oh, I guess I'm done. Make an offer. None of these is going to absolutely work on your site. I think that anyone who's running an online business right now is going to have to get up the learning curve on A/B testing, data analysis, and using some of these additional tools that are so amazing and so inexpensive, click tracking, session recording, even surveys and things like that, to really understand what is going on with your mobile visitors, because they're coming in a completely different context. And less of what you know about your desktop site is going to be applicable to your mobile site. But if I was to say, so if you were just going to go off and start researching a testing tool, or if you were going to do what we call serial testing, where you're going to be making a change and watching how sales change based on what you're doing, doesn't require an A/B testing tool, I would start off with, go ahead and test all your mobile sites, the different operating systems, browsers, etc. Go ahead and test them live. And there's Browser Stack is an example of an online service that will actually test your site on a variety of devices and show you the results. It's static, so you don't really get the full effect of using the site and making sure that you don't break something and have sticky headers popping on and off and things like that at the wrong time. But go ahead and find a way to give your full suite of devices, browsers, and operating systems a test. And those of you that might be using Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, you can go in and it will tell you what the top 80% of your visitors are coming, what devices they're coming on. Go and make sure that you're testing on those and that you're testing, of course, on a slower connection, 3G, 4G. Experiment with different mobile goals. Excuse me. If folks aren't buying on mobile, maybe there's a call to action that will begin a conversation with them. If they're not subscribing on mobile, is there an interim offer, a trial or something that you could use instead? Start experimenting with different calls to action on mobile. Sticky headers and footers, the lead top hat, the headband and sticky shoes. This is usually a source of some early wins for us when we're testing on mobile. So I would recommend trying some of those. And then, of course, the bottom of the page content. See what happens when you make that offer at the bottom of the page instead of having just your copyright down there. And, you know, it's a little bit harrowing. This is my partner, Joel, who runs most of our tests here at Conversion Sciences. This was when he first joined us back in about 2011. This is after doing a series of mobile tests, this is the way he looked, and if he keeps going on this pace, we think it's going to be about like this within the next couple of years. So mobile's going to take some work, but the opportunity is so large that it's going to be worth it. And those businesses that get there first are going to, your competitors are going to be jealous, wondering what you're doing. If you want to get more details on designing for the mobile web, we have an ebook. Please go and download this free PDF. It will cover a lot of the things that I've covered here. There's some additional examples in there, some more detail, and I think you'll find it very, very helpful in not only remembering what I've said today, but in picking up some new tools and some new mobile customers.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate your presentation. It was really great content, and I know we had a good interaction. I did have one last question here that I think would be relative that everyone might be interested in. It says, should the NAP in the footers be dropped on mobile? Name, address, phone number. I'm sure you're familiar with what NAP is.
In other words, just kind of like copyright information, what your company is, the
NAP is like your address, your name, you know, all that kind of stuff that that those footers of your typical desktop.
You know, so there's some good reasons to have that information. I think the question is, do you want to put that stuff above a call to action? Do you want to make it as small as possible so you have maximize the amount of room you have on the screen above it for the call to action? So the footer links generally have an SEO component to them, and so they help with SEO. And there might be legal issues. I mean, you do want to copyright what you have. So I don't think you need to necessarily remove it, but de-emphasize it, right? If you look at a lot of desktop footers, it is, you know, half the screen, half of a full desktop screen is covered with links and things like that, social media icons. Strip off what's not absolutely necessary, squish it down, make it as small as possible, and leave room for that dripping pan just above it. That would be my advice.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks again to Brian. A reminder that the recording of this webinar will be available at Convirza.com. We'll be posting that here probably by, when we get the recording today, it should be up probably by tomorrow. You also will be getting an email follow-up from Convirza. You can get that email directly to you. One of our sales reps can email that to you when they follow up with you. So thanks again for everyone for joining, and for Brian for the presentation, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone next week. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you all.